The three recognitions, I'll read them. I've got them prepared in case you'd ask me that.
Right.
Great question. So here we are. Three recognitions. The recognition of the world of meaning. I can tell you what that means in a minute if you wish. Number two, a recognition of those who implement world affairs and who engineer those steps which lead mankind onward toward its destined goal. That's number two. Number three, a steadily increased recognition of the plan on the part of the masses. DK goes on to say, these three recognitions must be evidenced by humanity and affect human thinking and action if the total destruction of mankind is to be averted. Now that's an important point, Joshua. Averted. They must form the theme of all the propaganda work to be done during the next few decades until the year 2025.
Welcome back to Joshua's Magic, everybody. Got a special guest with another interview on the topic of 2025 today. I'm joined by Steve Chernikeeff. He's a spiritual author and the leader of the 12s group. Welcome, Steve, or Steven.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Glad to be here.
Yeah, well, you've been interested in this topic of the significance of the year we've just entered, 2025, for a while now. And I actually saw a video you did with JJ Dewey a number of years ago talking about it. But now we're here in the actual year, and I thought it'd be great to have you on to talk about it a little.
Well, thank you for inviting me, as I said. And yes, 2025, what a magnificent year it is. Many years ago, I learned about 2025 when I was very young, when I was reading the books of Alice A. Bailey, and she highlights this magical year of 2025. And I've been banging on about it online, as many people will know, for many decades now, actually. So here we are, as you say. Amazingly, it feels very strange to be here, I must say. But here we are.
So can you tell us what, I guess we'll start in, what's the significance of this year? Why is this so special? Why not the year 2000 or something? What's so interesting about this year compared to?
Well, that's a great question, Joshua. And of course, it goes back many hundreds of years. You ask what the significance of this year is. Well, actually, 1925 was just as significant as this year, and 1825 before that, and before that, and before that. However, evolution is progressive, as we know, and therefore, every 100 years, we make a huge step forward. And basically, 2025 symbolizes the coming together of our spiritual hierarchy to make decisions for the next 100 years. So, therefore, in 1925, what did they decide? I think this is a good way to lead into 2025. In 1925, Alice Bailey just started the Lucis Trust. She just published, actually in that year, 1925, a treatise on cosmic fire. And the reason all that came together in 1925, as we've already alluded to, it was a 100-year meeting of the hierarchy. And now here we are again, 100 years later in 2025. It seems amazing to me to actually be here, because I've been talking about it for nearly 50 years, but here we are.
So the spiritual hierarchy, I assume many people are familiar with that idea who are watching this, but maybe some aren't. Could you give us your understanding of some of the basics of what that is or what that concept entails?
The spiritual hierarchy means different things to different people. It is the conglomeration of teachers of mankind that sit behind mankind and try to lead us towards a better place, towards the light, if you like. They've always been there for many thousands of years, all the way from Lemurian and Atlantean times. And the spiritual hierarchy have been popularized, I suppose, if we use that word, by H.P. Blavatsky in the 1800s and Alice Bailey, particularly in the 1900s, but also Helena Roerich and other teachers. And the spiritual hierarchy is made up of senior teachers of humanity. Actually, I don't really like the word masters myself. Mm-hmm. I think masters is a loaded term. I think I prefer to call them teachers or elder brethren, something like that, or adepts I use quite a lot. But going back into...
there's a number of different terms, and you see
There
one set
are,
of teachings, they're referred to one way, another set, they're referred to another way. So it's important to look
yes.
at sort of the underlying idea or the concept behind it and not get too caught up in the terminology sometimes.
Well, the most important thing is actually, of course, is not the words we use, it's the energy behind the words. And so when we use a word like master, it seems like a very separate thing from us. But actually, everything is energy in our universe. And the masters represent energy totally. That's what they're masters of. What does the word master mean? It means overcoming the personality self, and to a certain extent, the soul self too. It means mastery. So when we say master, we don't mean master in a sense of a guy sitting on a mountain with a long beard meditating all day. I don't see masters in that way at all, at all. However, in the past, especially in the 1800s and the early 1900s, the masters needed a way to represent themselves. And so therefore they actually lived on the earth, and some still do. And they had to take human form, which also brought with it sometimes family responsibilities, sometimes career responsibilities and things like that. And they worked in their spiritual life on the inner planes in concurrence with their incarnate life.
And so these masters make up the spiritual hierarchy. And as you were talking about before, every 100 years they get together and they sort of several decisions about how to move forward with helping humanity and such. Correct?
That's right, but it's not in the sense of as you would think of as an annual general meeting, so to speak. People often say to me, "Oh, is it like they all come around a table and
hotel in Miami?" That's not how it works.
No, they booked a hotel in Tibet, I believe.
Oh.
But they don't sit around and discuss things and have a vote. That's not how it's done. It's an energy coming together. So, for instance, within the spiritual hierarchy, we have 7 major energy groups called rays. And we have masters on these different rays, and they come together, well, not just in the 100 years, of course, they come together in the 100 years to decide the next 100 years, but they actually meet regularly, but not all together in one lump, so to speak.
Well, there are always some degree of telepathic communication and oneness, right?
Well, telepathy is the way that they communicate on the inner planes totally. I mean, we don't have verbalization of words like we do because they simply don't have the apparatus to make the sound.
Except the physical bodied ones.
Well, the masters when they normally live on the earth, and several do, they occupy something called the Maya Varupa, which is a body which they can use and utilize, and they can go back to the inner planes for several years or longer, and then come back and utilize that body again. So Madame Blavatsky was the first one to bring it to the attention of humanity. Or shall I say the re-attention, because people did understand the masters many decades ago, but she brought it back to the attention of the public, and she introduced the concept of the masters again. In fact, she met them physically, and so did Alice Bailey, and so that's how it was reintroduced to humanity. And the reason that happened, you might ask me, why did that happen? It happened because of the 1925 convocation, and then getting ready for this 2025 convocation. And the 1925 convocation was put together to decide how the hierarchy was going to approach the earth again. And this, as you well know, and I'm sure your viewers will know, is called the externalization of the hierarchy. And that really means the hierarchy coming back into the knowledge of humans. That's what the term means to me.
Plato talks about in Atlantis that the gods walked among men, or they communed with men, and then there was a separation. And now it's an attempt to reestablish that on a higher turn of the spiral, because the Atlantean consciousness was much more emotional, but today humanity is developing a more mental focus or consciousness.
Well, you've put it perfectly well. I mean, Atlantean times were astral times. The priests were astralized, and the fall of Atlantis was because of that astralization of the species of human beings, and that had to be swept away, ready for the mental to come now. And it takes a long time. I mean, we look back at Atlantis all those years ago, and we think, oh, you know, thousands of years, etc. But at the end of the day, in human terms, it's not that long.
Yeah.
I'm sure we were there, Joshua.
Who knows? But yeah, we've regarding the externalization of the hierarchy. I mean, that's one of the point that Tibetan sort of gets on, is that the mind is closer to the soul than the emotions are, and the closer humanities become more useful in reasoning and thinking, the closer we are to actually bringing the soul into being. And on the world stage, you know, it's sort of the kingdom of God or the spiritual hierarchy being rooted in the physical plane activity connected with humanity, just like the soul, the goal in the individual is the soul being connected through the personality. So that's hopefully what we're looking at. But could you go through some of these years? I know, and I was reading one of your books on this, and you talked about the different conclaves and things that have sort of been decided in the past. Can you, you know, run down some of that or explain a little bit of that?
If I can remember which ones did what, they're in the book. But it was a progressive externalization. So when we talk about the externalization of the hierarchy, we can't just look at it as something that's happening right now. It's a continuum going back. And I think DK talked about it starting in 1625. But I must say I can't remember exactly what happened in 1625. I'm not sure I was there or not.
Well, one thing he says, if I remember correctly, was at the 1525 conclave, the hierarchy before then had been more hands-off with humanity. And they, I guess in preparing for future things, they decided they need to be involved a little bit more. And also that they saw so much separateness and separation. You know, it was like, I'm this religion, you're that religion. You're this country, you're this group of people. And so I remember something about them needing to make an effort to move humanity closer to bridging some of those divides. I think that was
yes, but you're absolutely right. But it's not one way.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, the great occult axiom is that it has to be two-way. And in fact, it relies on human beings reaching out to hierarchy. This is a very crucial point. The externalization of the hierarchy are not the hierarchy coming towards humanity.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't describe it well in my understanding.
Yeah.
Humanity has to reach out to hierarchy. And right now, when you look at the world and the wars and everything, it seems impossible to think like that. But that's what it relies on.
Well, I think the key is reciprocity, right? It's like you can't dance with somebody that's just there like a limp, you know, whatever. There's got to be a back and a forth. You know, it's like that famous, was it Michelangelo or Donatello, the painting where God's reaching down and Adam is reaching up, you know.
In the Sistine Chapel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've got to reach up, and then, you know, and you get the thing reaching down. But if God has to reach all the way down, you're not ready, you know.
Yeah. Well, I think I read somewhere that a master had said that if you put one hand out to me, I'll put 100 out to you.
Mm.
You know, and but human beings have to overcome the animal nature, the materialistic nature, and begin to reach out to the light. Now, I want to make it clear, it doesn't mean that they have to understand or believe in the hierarchy to do that. There are many good people in this world who reach out to the light and do good, and they know nothing about the hierarchy at all. So this must be very clear about that. But those of us in the what we got, the ancient wisdom genre, if you like, most of us accept basic tenets of theosophy, which are reincarnation, karma, the existence of hierarchy. Those are probably the three biggest things. And so we can articulate technically how we do it. Whereas modern masculinity are often driven, thankfully, by the spirit of goodwill, and they will help each other. Not everybody, but I'm talking about the good people. They will help each other. They will organize to help other people. They will help animals. They will be careful of the environment. They will be careful not to cheat and lie and steal. Those people are the people of goodwill. And those people are growing all the time. And therefore, you're in the world today, you're getting this big backlash against things like wars and things like that. Now, we've not reached the stage where we can get rid of them.
Yeah.
But that's what we're working towards. And the mass of humanity has to make a reach towards hierarchy, not just the few people actually who know the technicalities as we do.
Well, for people that aren't, into all these sort of occult and esoteric ideas, there's got to be, they might not think of it as the hierarchy, but reaching towards God, reaching towards being a better person, things like that. But, at a higher stage than wherever they are currently,
Well, it's like driving a car. I mean, I know how to drive a car, but I'm not a mechanic.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, people doing good, I mean, not for reward, but actually helping animals or helping the environment or helping other people, are working for the hierarchy in that sense. Because at the end of the day, our individual karma and planetary karma relies on human beings evolving and doing the right thing. And so I've met many people in my life who do wonderful work in various aspects. They're clueless about theosophy.
I had this sort of experience along these lines where I was working with a group of esoterically inclined people, and I had this spiritual contact come to me, and I was given these, I won't go into the whole story, but a certain kind of energy that I was supposed to share with 5 different people. And I thought, I'm going to share with the people in the group, but I was only supposed to share it with a few of those. And then one I was supposed to share at this fast food restaurant I was working at. Like, I had an impression along those lines, and I was like, that doesn't make any sense, because I didn't think of the people there as being all that evolved. But this one woman who, I liked and we talked with, but that day, it just sort of came up in conversation that years ago when she worked at a McDonald's, she would go at like 1 a.m. when they closed. She would take like the leftover food and give it out to homeless people, like, and not on behalf of McDonald's. Like, she just did this on her own. And she was doing that for like, she didn't just do it once. She was doing it like repeatedly. And then it clicked with me like, I'm definitely supposed to give one of these things to her. And she actually had this really high sort of spiritual experience by it. But like, you just never know. Some people can be really developed spiritually, at least along certain lines. And you don't know until you know.
Well, whether they're spiritual or not is actually almost irrelevant. I mean, part of the teachings of DK is about spreading goodwill and love and blessings, if you like. I call it blessings to people as you go. I mean, every day when I on my motorcycle or something and I see a dog in the street, I'm always saying a little prayer for them. And it's not because the dog's going to sit up and go, "Hey, do you know the masters?" Because unfortunately, dogs don't normally do that. So, but it's done without thought of advancing them, without thought of them repaying any kindness. It's simply done because you bless everything around you, trees, animals, and now that sounds a little bit new agey, a little bit strange, but actually it's sound occult teaching.
Well, because science has picked up on this to some degree, that they've, I think, done research that, like, if you say nice things to plants and you treat them, kindly, with words and stuff, not just like watering them in sunlight, that they actually grow more and respond better to things. So there's even some scientific evidence for some of that stuff.
The Secret Life of Plants, the book was called, I think, that started that. And I think it's really a question of going back to this word energy again, because it's not what we say actually, it's the energy behind it. So if I see an older person in the street and I only say a few words inside, I just say blessings and healing is what I normally say inside. And it's not about the words because they don't hear them. It's about the energy of holding that person for a nanosecond and giving them that energy. There's a very famous picture by Nicholas Roerich. I've forgotten the exact title. And it's got a saint sitting on a mountain. And there's a river running alongside him. And he's blessing strangers. And I can't remember the saint's name, but it's called Saint something, blessing strangers. And what he's doing is the sound occult teaching that Moira discussed with the Heroics. It's about sending your blessings to complete strangers without any thought of them even knowing it happens. You know, it might sound crazy to some of your viewers, but I walk around the shopping centre doing it. You know, not out loud. Otherwise, the security would be after me, saying there's this crazy guy going around blessing people. But if you do, you do internally. You know, you don't have to. You don't hold on to it. You just blessings and team. And I find that when I see someone or even a tree or a dog or anything, and I say it, I'm sending the energy to that being. Which is why I so love the Buddhist term peace to all beings, which encompasses everything from the smallest ant to the greatest Shohan of our hierarchy.
Yeah, I think that's important. And the goodwill work, you know, the Tibetan talked about that being the sort of the preparation for the new age and like a really important thing. And you have the will to good, which is like sort of like the spiritual will that more advanced people or disciples are sort of tuning into, hopefully, and then goodwill, and those two have to be sort of married together to create the new age.
Well, goodwill, of course, is the. I've got to be careful how I say this because it sounds like it's denigrating it, and I'm not. It is the lowest form of love in hierarchical terms, in occult terms. People of goodwill, responding to others with goodwill, is an aspect of love, but it's actually the lowest form of aspect. And therefore, evolution takes us from just being nice people through to increasing that love, refining that love, and being more focused into the greater light.
Yeah, so getting back to 2025 a little bit more. A little bit of a tangent. I mean, it's all connected, but
yeah.
The thing that keeps coming up, at least in esoteric circles, is have we done enough to prepare for it? Because the Tibetan, as you well know, talks about how if these certain realizations aren't achieved by humanity, then the destruction of humanity might happen if it's not done before 2025. Do you have any thoughts on that?
1,000.
All right.
a subject dear to my heart. The 3 recognitions from DK in Discipleship in the New Age, Volume 2. I've been talking about the 3 recognitions again for a very long time. If you want my opinion, and this is not based on any sort of information gathered from anywhere else. It's my understanding is I think we're very close to World War III. I think humanity has failed quite a lot about how advanced it could have been. I think that it would take a tremendous amount of effort from disciples around the world and people of goodwill to turn the tide. And it could be done. But when you look at DK's prophecies, we can call them prophecies because that's what they are, concerning 2025 and what humanity has to achieve, if you're asking me a straight question for a personal opinion, it's not my group opinion, it's my personal opinion, I believe we haven't achieved it. You might be surprised to hear me say that.
Lay out those 3 recognitions for people that aren't aware. That he
said. The 3 recognitions, I'll read them. I've got them prepared in case you'd ask me that. Right. Great question. So here we are. 3 recognitions. The recognition of the world of meaning. I can tell you what that means in a minute if you wish. Number 2, a recognition of those who implement world affairs and who engineer those steps which lead mankind onward toward its destined goal. That's number 2. Number 3, a steadily increased recognition of the plan on the part of the masses. DK goes on to say, these 3 recognitions must be evidenced by humanity and affect human thinking and action if the total destruction of mankind is to be averted. Now that's an important point, Joshua. Averted. They must form the theme of all the propaganda work to be done during the next few decades until the year 2025. DK's explicit. Some people in the genre avoid it and drive me crazy when they avoid it because I bring it up constantly, and they don't want to look at it. And even when I read articles on 2025 full of love and peace, they don't mention these three recognitions anywhere. Not all of them, but most of them don't. And I always bring it up.
You know, I can sort of understand to a degree people not wanting to be like, humanity's going to end, but not even mentioning the three recognitions without that is a little strange if you're going to talk about 2025.
Some of the more serious, deeper students do mention it, but certainly some people don't. And I've come into a lot of trouble over this. I've been kicked off sites about this, because I've said, well, what about that? Oh, we don't discuss that. And quite a few people in our genre really feel the battle for light is over. I've talked to them. I speak to them.
I've heard that and gotten that sense from people. I think
it gets me into trouble, Joshua, but I don't agree. These people say to me, "Oh, you're so negative." I'm not negative at all. I'm a very positive person. But the fact is that we can't say. Well, some people say that the externalization's already started. Some people say the externalization started 100 years ago. Some people say 1966. We can go on like that forever, speculating.
Well, so let's get
Sorry. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, well, why don't we get into those three recognitions that the Tibetan was hoping for humanity to realize and explore them a little bit?
Well, I think before we do that, can I just describe a little bit how my understanding of why we've not achieved some of it, and also why it was said in the first place. Can I just go into that just a little bit? But this is again, I don't represent my group on this particular issue. This is my understanding of it. So I might want to make that clear, because some people in my group won't agree with me, and that's fine.
Well, I think that's important to, and that's what I try to do on this channel is I don't necessarily agree with everything everybody I interview says, but I want to, get people of different perspective and different opinions out there so that people can, for themselves, sort of synthesize what they think is the truth out of it or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, go ahead with what you want.
I think we need to start by saying, what is a master? Now, we've already discussed a little bit about a master's there to overcome the five senses and to have control of the personality, et cetera, and get to what we call the fifth initiation. But is a master a perfect being, Joshua? That's the question to ask yourself. Now, many in Theosophy believe masters are perfect beings. And that's just nonsense. It's just not true. Masters are perfect beings in control of their lower selves. That is true. But if it were true that a master was a perfect being, there would be no sixth, seventh initiations, would there? Because you'd already got it all.
Yeah.
and when Blavatsky and Bailey and Rorik talk about other planets and onward evolution, well, you wouldn't be able to do it, would you? Because you'd be perfect anyway.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry to blow a hole in that old theosophical chestnut, but masters have reached perfection in the sense of they don't give way to emotions. They don't give in to
desires,
and all that. They are passive observers. They are active workers, passive observers. They and therefore the reason I'm saying all this is a prelude to answering your question, is that masters cannot know the future. Now, why is that? People will say, well, because they're not perfect in that sense. They're not God. They are not able to understand how human beings are going to respond. So, as an example of that, a good example of that would be DK. Now, DK talked about a lot of things in his books about the World Federation of Nations, about lots of things by the year 2025 would have happened.
Yeah. I think
DK
etheric
said,
vision would be very prevalent, he was saying, by the end of last century.
that's
Yeah.
exactly right, Joshua. That's what he said. And he said, by the year 2025, there'll be a World Federation of Nations and there'll be millions of disciples everywhere. And basically, things will be fantastic. Now, I'm looking at my TV screen occasionally. It doesn't look that fantastic to me. And the reason that is that DK and Alice and the Lucis Trust and everything else, they had hoped that humanity would be a lot more advanced than it is now. And we had opportunities to be so. The 1960s, for instance, was probably one of the best opportunities that we ever had.
Yeah, I was
With
just
the
thinking about that. That it really seemed like there was this momentum during World War II, and
yes,
then not long after World War II, it sort of petered out.
well, that's exactly right. It went through the 50s of rebuilding, and of course, 1950 DK talked about as a very significant year. We got to the 60s, and then we had the peace and love and all that stuff, and you know, a lot of it was inspired by Goodwill. You know, a lot of it wasn't very informed Goodwill, but it was Goodwill. But then, of course, you had the darker side creeping in, the prevalence of drugs and that sort of thing. So DK and the hierarchy were hoping that after the 1925 convocation, that humanity would advance a lot more quickly than it has. And we can't do anything about human free will. We just can't. You know, all we can do is teach and share and use certain occult techniques, as we do in 12s, to try to let in more light into the world. But we can't control people. We can't force people to love each other. We can't.
Yeah.
I mean, the war in Ukraine, Gaza, I mean, there's death and destruction and evil all around our planet. And not everywhere, but in several places. The only way DK talks about of actually dealing with this, to bring in the externalization and the New Age, although I don't really like that term either, New Age, is through group work. DK talks about group work throughout his 18 books.
Yeah, it's one of his big focuses, that idea.
Big focuses. But how many groups are there doing group work? Do you know many?
I know
I'm talking
some.
about group.
I mean, it also depends on what degree. I mean, you have that true esoteric, abstract, spiritual group work. That's one thing. But there's definitely been an uptick in group work, I think, over the last century, in the more outer ways, right? You know, so the energy gets stepped down, and you see a lot more groups and charitable organizations and stuff like that. It's not at like the highest level of it, but it's an indication of that incoming Christ energy and the group and
Oh
stuff.
yeah, that's a slightly different thing. That's the work of Goodwill, and I totally agree that has been much higher,
Yeah.
and is progressing. There's no doubt about that. And there's more and more groups around, but that wasn't really what I was referring to as groups. Groups, I mean, in an occult sense, as DK talks about. DK lists the 14, you know, rules for initiation.
Yeah.
14 rules for discipleship. Those types of groups who actually follow those, and in formation, which is what we're trying to do, in formation, set up a conduit of light, a line of least resistance for hierarchy and the light to come into the world. Because that's what we need. We don't just need millions of goodwill workers. We need those.
Yeah.
But also we need thousands of people in groups focusing technically to create the antikarana to get the light into the world. And of course, as an esotericist, I would say that was the only way to save this planet. DK started that work back in the 1930s and 40s, of course, with triangles. He started it. Triangle is the smallest group formation you can have. And I believe the work of triangles of the Lucis Trust has saved humanity. I really do believe that. And now we're taking it to the next level. But triangles, thousands of them, not so many, not tens of thousands that people sometimes think, but there's thousands, do a lot of fantastic work for many decades, and they deserve the credit for that.
Yeah, the Tibetans said the triangles were pretty important, and I think he said if there were 100,000 triangles, the hierarchy could just get all kinds of stuff done because that that energy would be there that would, I guess, allow things to move forward. But it's kind of
Well, we're moving triangles, of course, into groups of 9 in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and then now into 12s. So that's the progression of the triangle work. It's still triangles. You must remember 12s is really just 4 triangles. So it's still the triangle work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to get back to those 3 realizations, did you have more preamble before we could get
No,
into
no. I'm ready to go
So
through
the
them.
first one about a recognition of the world of meaning. Let's explore that a little bit. What does that look like? What is the world?
The world of meaning. Well, I could sit here for hours talking about the world of meaning. I won't. Don't worry. But the world of meaning. What is meaning? What does it mean to you?
Well, there's at least 2 definitions. I mean, there's meaning, what do you mean? What's your intention? Like you said, kind of the energy behind words. And then there's the world of the soul, or the world of ideas. That's sort of the more esoteric understanding of the world of meaning.
The world of meaning is about, really, you could almost call it the world of purpose as well. That's another way of putting it. What is the world of meaning? It is that which drives everything behind it. So I would term it as karmic, if you like. You could use that word, karma. People misunderstand the word karma all the time. It's about the energy of movement, about the energy, the dynamic energy of change. The world of meaning is about everything you do, every thought you have has a purpose and a meaning behind it. And it's a really important concept that people don't often grasp. The world of meaning. And humanity has to understand the world of meaning. Why are they here? And most important thing that comes out of that comment is to understand the transitory and temporary nature of incarnation. This is one of the biggest failings, I believe, of humanity, is that they thinking that their incarnation is all there is. That is why.
Well, you have that slogan, you only live once, that goes around.
Yeah, I hate that slogan.
Yeah, me too.
So a Buddhist would say you only live, 700 times.
Yeah, right.
But the fact is that if we believe as humanity that we only live once, that means, why do you have any regard for laws? Why would you ever not rob a bank? Why would you ever bring up children? Why would you ever have a family? Why would you ever do anything? Because you've only got one time, and some people do believe this way, by the way. You only got one time, so you can go completely crazy. You can kill. As long as you don't get caught and put in jail, you can do what you want. And some people really believe it. In fact, the majority of humanity are selfish because they believe that this is the only life that they have. Of course, the great religions teach that there's an afterlife.
Well, I'd argue most people are selfish because they're selfish, and that belief, because they're emotionally polarized, and whatever beliefs that fit into that, it fits in because they're selfish. It's usually not the beliefs that are causing it, though sometimes it is.
No, but the point I was making was that if they knew about the afterlife, if they knew and believed in the role of karma, if they knew about reincarnation, really knew, not just said, "Oh yeah, I believe in reincarnation." This, I was Pharaoh in my last life, this sort of stuff. If they really understood it, then no one would misbehave, would they?
Yeah, people would probably fall short no matter what.
Well,
there'd be a lot less of it, right?
They listen. If you knew by killing this person, you are gonna end up as a farmer in the Serengeti next life, with no rice to eat, you might think about not doing it.
It would drastically cut down that kind of stuff.
Yeah. The point is the esotericism teaches is that if we understand these things, and we understand the world of meaning, then we will become better people. That doesn't mean to say, as you've well pointed out, that doesn't mean to say we're going to be perfect. It doesn't mean to say we're not going to make mistakes. God, I've made hundreds of mistakes in my life. Too many. But it means that we understand and accept responsibility for those mistakes as well.
Yeah.
The world of meaning. It means, it means that I know that when I do something wrong then I will pay the karmic consequence. And when DK talks about the world of meaning, that's what I understand to be the world of meaning.
Yeah, I appreciate that perspective. So that's the first recognition he wanted people to have more grounded, and I'm sure we made some progress on it, but it doesn't sound like we've made it as far as he was hoping for. But yeah, I'm sure you'd agree with that. But the second recognition, let's talk a little bit on that one.
Well, this is about the increased recognition of the plan, and again, it's back to what you've just said. Is that if we recognise the plan for humanity, then we're going to behave ourselves a lot more. Now, there is more recognition of the plan than there ever used to be, but it's not widespread. If I go to my local 7-Eleven and I say, hey, what do you think about the recognition of the plan? I think I'm going to end up in the local hospital pretty quickly.
Well, let's hope people aren't that violent. Right?
No, not violent. They'll just think I'm crazy. But the point
I
is,
see what you mean. Yeah.
who understands the recognition of the plan? Well, our genre understands it. Now, even if I have some disagreements with some in our genre about how to interpret it, at least they understand that there's a hierarchy. They understand that there's an afterlife and a reincarnation and there's karma.
Well,
and so they understand the plan.
The way DK talked about the plan, it's more than just like God's plan for humanity. Like, so this triangle of there's the purpose of God, there's the will of God, and then the lowest level is sort of the plan of God. And the plan is in some way taking those higher two things and sort of adapting them to humanity and like what can be accomplished in the relatively near term. Would you agree with that, or do you have any further thoughts?
Humanity as a whole needs to evolve out of the darkness of materialism into the light. That sounds very trite thing to say, you know. You'd find some new age guru saying that online, but I mean it in a very deep and esoteric way. Humanity needs to change. We need to love each other. We need to look after each other. We need to have compassion. We need to share more, cooperate more. And if we have an understanding of the world of meaning and the significance of the plan and recognition of the plan, as DK points out, then there's no question what will follow is an understanding and peace and compassion in our world. If you don't understand that there's more to life, doesn't mean you have to understand about the hierarchy. I mean, many Christians, Muslims, Buddhists, Hindus can be very good people and do very good work and have a great incarnation and advance in that incarnation and never know anything about the hierarchy, as I've discussed before. But they're still pushing forward the plan, God's plan, because God's plan is that we all evolve out of the darkness back to God, or as the Hindus call it, Godhead, you know, back to God.
Out of separation into union.
Out of separation, yes. Separation is one of the greatest evils ever. Separation, Joshua. We're thinking about the separation of our incarnation from our other incarnations. We think about separation of us from our family and friends who have died. We think about separation from the people who live next door, who live in a different country. And in fact, one of the greatest evils is separation about that country. Let's go and kill them. You know, yes, you know, not remembering that they're just like you and I. They get up in the morning, they have families, they have jobs, they eat, they go to sleep. You know, we're all the same. We're all souls.
I think one of the interesting revelations coming out in the last maybe few decades is how much people, the populace of countries are developing or already have a view that like the people in those other countries aren't so different in a lot of ways. And one of the main problems is like the people controlling things behind the scenes who were looking for wars for profit and, you know, other sort of interests and stuff. And so that's one of the main separations I see is obviously different people in different countries, there's definitely separation there and different cultures and values and stuff. But, the people that are financial interest behind wars and conflicts and stuff versus the interest of the masses, so to speak.
But that's talking about touching on evil and materialism,
Yeah.
which is another great subject to discuss. I'll discuss it very quickly. I mean, evil is not something which is imposed from outside. Evil is an energy. So when I think about evil, and I don't do it too often, I tend to think of it as an energy that is simply subverted from the light. And evil is an absence of light, if you like. So people who are evil, and there are many evil acts in the world. I mean, terrible things. People do terrible things, humanity, to the environment, to the animal life, and to other people. I mean, really, really bad things. And they are responding to an energy, the inverted energy, the dark forces, if you like, that some theosophists call it. I try to avoid words like dark forces because it conjures up some Saruman type of figure on a mountain throwing down thunderbolts, and it's not like that at all. It's just not like that. It's about an energy in the world, and the energy of materialism and clinginess is like a fog, a miasma around us of illusion, and it is illusion because the reality is the light. The reality is the hierarchy, the light, karma, and reincarnation and life after death. That's the reality. We can't see it because we separate ourselves, to go back to your theme, from it. And so all of us, every single one of us, is a part of the light. So the New Age type people are right in that respect, that we are all light. They love to say, don't they?
We're made of star stuff.
Say, don't they? But they could misunderstand all the bits in between. But we are all light, but some are lesser light than others. we can say, but our destiny, if you like, is to all come out of this and back to a greater peace and compassion that we can have before us.
Well, speaking of the plan and sort of the forces of evil, it calls up another kind of cleavage or distinction there, that there is the spiritual plan or the plan of light or the White Brotherhood or Masters of Wisdom, whatever you want to call it. But there's also this sort of counter plan, the plan of selfishness or materialism as formulated by the Black Lodge. And it occurred to me when you initially read the second thing about the people who were engineering or governing, what was it, the leading humanity to its destiny, that a lot of people might have reacted to that as like some of these let's say puppet masters around the world that have been talked about. And it's sort of a distorted reflection of the true teachers, as you put it before, right? So the teachers are trying to lead humanity in a direction of caring about each other, of real human rights. And then there's this other sort of group of selfish interest influenced by the Black Lodge trying to lead us in a direction that it sometimes might even appear to be leading us towards those same things, but it's actually leading towards more selfish and separative ends.
Yes, that's right. That is what's happening. Evil is not a person; it is an energy in the world, and the world is a very. I mean, the world is very unevolved, actually. When you look at it, and in fact, it's the only plane, interestingly, where you have evolved people on mixing in the same place as unevolved people, which is why it's a great plane for advancement, because you can make a lot of advancement by incarnating here.
You can run you've got all sorts of people on the physical plane.
They are. I mean, what I mean by that, to explain it a bit more for your viewers, is that we have evil people like Hitlers and Stalins, and then we have great leaders as well. Buddha, Krishna, etc. So we have on this plane, this earth plane, this is the only plane like it. No other planes are like this. If you recall, Joshua, the planes, each plane is its own energy.
Yeah.
Astral, mental, Buddhic, etc. Atmic. And all the souls who reside in that plane are at that level. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
You can't get a Hitler knocking on the door of the Buddhic plane.
Yeah.
And saying, let me in, you know, because the energy excludes him.
Yeah.
But on the earth, it doesn't. And the earth was created for that purpose, as a great melting pot where you put all these souls, some more advanced than others, to develop and grow together en masse towards the light that is there before us. Because the light is always there. The light is not coming to us, you see. The light is there. It's there continually. It never changes. It's us going towards the light that makes it seem like the light's coming towards us. Actually, in technical terms, it's not. Light is stable, you know. So we try to improve ourselves, we try to improve our environment, we try to improve the way we interact with people, and all these things.
Well, like you're saying light, it's like your eyes, right? There are other spectrums, but we can only see them. And that's like our consciousness tuning into the light of the soul and the spiritual light that's already there, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like saying, what is color, as an example.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when I was a child, I realized that I could see color differently with each eye. Probably you're the same, probably everybody's the same. So I could look at a blue with my right eye, and it will look one type of blue, and I could turn the other eye and switch the other eye off, and it will seem a different type of blue. But together they seem.
I've not. I was just checking it out.
I probably just got bad eyes. I thought you were winking at me there.
No,
is that a sign to speed up or what?
I don't know.
But I noticed when I was in my teenager years that I could see different colours with different eyes. Very strange thing. Still can. And then I realised.
Well, let us know in the comments if anybody out there, if you can see that or not. And if you're enjoying the video, leave a like on it and consider subscribing for more stuff. But yeah, continue on, Steve.
And I often wondered, strangely, I was a strange kid, which one is real?
Mm.
You know, it's like that old thing about a branch falling in the forest. Does it actually make a sound? You know,
yeah.
that type of thing. So at the end of the day, who is to say what is, you know, this or that? And so our perception of reality is dependent upon where we are now and which eye we shut, for instance, in this particular minor case. And so our souls are the same. We you know, the more advanced we become, the more clarity we get. But the light is continual. So the light that a Hindu could see or feel, if you like, when they do their meditations, or a Buddhist will see or feel, it's not a Buddhic light, it's not a Hindu light. It is only one light. And that's the truism that we are all one. But not in the sense that some people interpret it, but in that sense we are, because the light is continuous and never changes. As Krishnamurti once said, the light of the sun shines on everyone equally.
It's pretty good.
And Krishnamurti got it right. There's no two suns, there's only one sun.
Yeah. So moving on to the a weird transition, but moving on to the third recognition that Tibetan was looking
Yes.
for.
A recognition of those who implement the plan, or these three can go in various different ways. It doesn't matter which one you say first. A recognition of the plan, and a recognition of those who implement the plan. And of course, the first one, the world of meaning. Those are the three. So basically, you can put all of three of them in one pot. They're all saying the same thing slightly differently. We need recognition of the plan. We need recognition of those who implement the plan. And we need an understanding of why the plan is there and where we're going with it. Those are the three basic recognitions. And if humanity is to avoid, not avoid, sorry, he said avert. Did he say, what did he say, avert or avoid? I've forgotten, averted. If the destruction of humanity is to be averted. Avoid, same thing. Averted. And can we do it? I think we can. I personally, as a personal opinion again, not a 12s group thing, that I personally think there'll be an intervention. I think that Christ, the world teacher, Maitreya, Imam Mahdi, whatever you want to call this energy, will come back and make him, say himself, I don't really like that word him, but make themselves understandably here and present. Because again, people get mixed up in the gender thing. Masters have no gender. So we call them masters, but we've all been born in, the soul has no gender, Joshua.
Well, the ones with physical bodies have gender, at least in their physical body, right?
Ah, that's a different thing.
Yeah.
The physical body has a gender.
Essence, right?
The physical body has a gender.
Yeah.
Two of them, and the soul does not have a gender,
Mm-hmm.
because you and I have been incarnated here several times, and I suggest that both of us have been male and female.
Yeah.
There is no gender at the soul level. It's just that the masters choose to represent themselves as male because it's an energy thing, as DK has described.
Well, there's that polarity of male and female, of sending and receiving. And in relation to humanity, humanity is in a sort of feminine receiving role relating to the masters. And the masters are sort of directing, sending, teaching.
I wouldn't call it male and female, though. I'd call it positive and negative.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think when as soon as you say male and female, you're suggesting the gender. And there is no gender. The hierarchy has a positive energy, and humanity has a negative energy. I don't mean negative in the sense of particularly bad.
Yeah, you mean in the electrical sense?
In electrical sense, yes. And then the hierarchy has a negative energy in the sense to Shambhala, who has the positive energy. So it goes like that. And we have a positive energy in relation to animals. You see what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
So you have that duality and polarity, but I personally, I do understand why people call it male and female, but I personally wouldn't use that term because I think it's a loaded term.
Well, I think one thing that's interesting to me is the reality of the male and female dynamics, and in different ways. I don't just mean in the human ways. Like I would see the positive and negative electrical things as male and female. I guess there's been at least in the West, this sort of idea that gender doesn't matter or the differences aren't there. But the masculine energy, the feminine energy, I think it is a useful concept. And I think it's something that's been a little bit unpinned from society. You know, it might have been too much focused on in the past, but I think we've sort of unfocused from it too much. And a lot of media today, I mean, you're older than I am, but when I was growing up, it was very much like men and women are almost the same. And then I, started to realize some things, and that wasn't really a correct presentation of truth. So yeah, I mean, I can understand the gender not being the most useful term in some of the spiritual stuff, but I think it does have some merit, and well, the meaning behind it definitely does.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, but we could then go on to talk about race.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
that's an even more touchy subject.
Yeah, that's right. But the fact is, the way I look at it, I mean, I'm not saying I'm right or wrong. This is just my understanding. Yeah, okay, sure. My understanding is the same as Martin Luther King said: be colorblind. Mm-hmm. I know that's not popular now. I know all of the BLM and everything else don't like this. I don't really care what they like and what they don't like. The fact is, souls are pure. They are not black or white. They are not male or female. They are not gay or straight. They are simply energy souls, and they incarnate to this earth in Africa, in America, in Russia, wherever they are, and they will incarnate as females and males, and sometimes in between for whatever purpose. So the fact is that when I see people, I see just souls. So when I do group meditations with my little group, I don't say to them, well, we want, 12 females or 12 males and everything else. We don't have any regard for that at all. And the Theosophical Society in its main precepts talks about, without race, religion or creed. And I think that's exactly the right thing to do. And in fact, funny enough, I was chatting to a very senior TS leader, just an aside, recently, and she was saying they're thinking of changing that. And I said, that would be a disaster.
What were they going to change it to?
Well, that's what they're asking opinions for. Mm. And I said to in fact, it's one of the presidents, I'll tell you, I was speaking to her. And I said to her, look, if you do that, I'm leaving. I've been a theosophist for since the 80s. You can't change what the masters wrote at the beginning, which was, we are a society regardless of race, creed, and I can't remember exact words.
Yeah.
Sex, race, creed, blah blah.
I mean, I said that is the same thing in like a lot of organizations. They all have similar things like that.
Just love the light, love the soul. At the end of the day, your point is correct too. That we are, of course, males and females have different energies and different roles. Of course, not denying that at all. But then again, a nuclear physicist has a different role than a road sweeper. We can't deny that either.
Yeah. Well, I think it's sort of it's like lenses of a telescope, if you will. Like that first lens, the most outer lens, is the lens of differentiation. You're a man, or you're a woman, you're this race, you're this job, you're what all these different things that make up different people. And that's one lens, right? But then, like you were saying, there's the lens where people are, seeing somebody as a soul. And that's the kind of work of the esotericist is to integrate those two things, to not necessarily give too much focus to the outer thing, but to also not become sort of an impractical dreamer and just be like, everything's the same, and No. I know that's not what you're saying.
No, that's not me at all. People who know me, that's not me at all. I mean, at the end of the day, you're exactly right. It's different lenses, and but the way I look at it is, when I meet people, I don't think of them as male, female, black or white. I just don't. And I don't think anybody in the group does. We just don't. When somebody asks to join the group, we don't have a questionnaire saying what sex are you and what's In fact, one of the rules of our group is we don't discuss personal stuff. Rarely discuss it. I don't know if my co-workers have kids. Normally, I don't know if they're married. Sometimes I know them, so I don't even know what job they've had. We just don't get into any of that personality rubbish. We just stick to the work that we're doing together. And we have this big thing in our group called setting aside. Whenever we go into meditations and group work, we say to everybody, please set aside, put in a box, those things that you don't need, those fears about careers and emotions, relationships, and all the miasma that we're all involved with in our daily lives, setting it aside. And I think the more advanced you become, which is, the more you're able to do that. And of course, we all fail. I fail all the time doing that. But the more advanced you become, those of us who are more advanced, which doesn't include myself, are able to do that perfectly. Like masters, for instance, fifth initiation, which is way beyond us. They don't need to set aside, because it's all set aside, completely gone forever. That's why they're perfect human beings.
Well, I think that's why it's almost like that second lens of the soul or the unity isn't really even developed, and that's part of what we're trying to do as humanity, is to be able to actually have that lens, to see that to a degree or more clearly.
But isn't that purpose of the second lens to destroy the first lens, transmute the first lens, so it's not there anymore?
It's sort of like the soul and the personality, right? Like the personality is purified, but it becomes subservient to the soul, right? So it's not the outer separative vision, so to speak, that's ruling and governing. It's the inner vision, and it's using that outer vision, like one, being conscious of differences, right? Like somebody has a broken arm, right? If you're going to help them, you have to be conscious of that difference, right? And so the true solar or humanitarian impulse would be presumably in that situation to help somebody, but it would have to use the technical knowledge, the knowledge of differentiation, to facilitate that. But that second lens is secondary to the first lens of the
I
soul.
think yeah, I think that's exactly right. In the first couple of initiations, that is the case. I think that from the second to the third, you definitely get rid of the personality. The personality is killed. And think of it this way: when we reincarnate, do you believe we have the same personality?
No, not exactly, but there's definitely trends that keep over.
It's the karma trends that keep over, right? So we don't have the same personality. So when you and I die, not too soon, we hope, the personality dies with us, right?
Yeah.
Because
the strange thing though is you read that the personality vehicles all fall away, but some of this research that people have done into past lives, you'll see a lot of personality quirks repeat.
That's a whole different subject. I'm a trained clinical hypnotherapist in one of my previous things, so I've studied past lives and done lots of work on it. What can I say? I think we shouldn't get into that because that's going to be a huge subject.
Fair enough.
No. I only say that not because I don't want to talk about it, but because I'm going to be here for another 3 hours.
And the video is about 2025. We've had a bunch of tangents along the way.
We've gone off into.
But back to the central theme of 2025. What are you expecting from this year? What is your perspective on it now? I assume it's changed in the years you've been focusing on, and now we're here. What are you anticipating, sensing about it?
Well, I can only talk from my perspective from the group that I'm working with. At the end of the day, I've been working towards this date, as I've described to you, for many decades with my group. And for me, it's a point of tension. It's a point of shambolic impact. That's what it is. So every 100 years, there's something technically called a shambolic impact. Shambhala, as some of you or most of you will know, is the place where the will of God is known. It's the center of the spiritual dynamic of our universe.
Yeah, and so there's the hierarchy, which is more second ray aligned, the sort of the son aspect of the father, and then the Shambhala is a much more highly evolved center with beings there that's much more aligned to the first ray.
Shambhala links more to the monad, and the soul links more to the soul, and then the personality links to the incarnate being, of course. So at the end of the day, the energy in 2025 from Shambhala will come through hierarchy down through the new group of world servers and into the world of humanity. What does it mean for me? It means that we are at this timely point of tension where the hierarchy expecting all of the people in our genre to get our act together and to respond to the hierarchical input into our world. Now, I would suggest to you that it's mainly through groups. When I say groups, I want to be differentiate between occult groups and normal groups. I'm not talking about groups of girl guides sitting in a church hall. That's a group too, but it's not a group as I discuss it. I'm discussing occult groups who work in formation. I would claim are the most powerful groups of all, triangles, etc. So working in formation opens up some sort of a conduit of light that can't be opened up any other way. Individuals can't do it. You could have a million individuals.
That point is certain energies can only be contacted or responded to from those kind of groups.
Yes.
So unless they're there, there's no receptor, right? It's like you've got the radio waves, but you don't have something picking them up. And the value of these groups is that they're bringing it down and can distribute it to the rest of humanity, in a sense.
Perfect. But you know the history of the discipleship in the New Age groups, right?
Yeah.
Where DK attempted to do this, and it failed.
Yeah.
I've
had DK along those lines too. I'm not DK by any means, but it's tough. I mean, you've done a lot of work with the 12s. I don't know if you've had other groups before that, but
No, 12s is my thing.
but
So,
yeah, it's
I,
difficult for a lot of reasons. There's a lot of personality stuff, and the central
oh,
thing is, can you come together through the soul, right?
it's
That's the oneness you're trying to achieve as a group, and a lot of personality stuff gets in the way of being able to make that unity or union.
our group has been quite fortunate. We've got quite a lot of disciples and co-workers mainly from the Lucis Trust and Moira Federation. Those are the two main ones. But we've also got a lot of disciples through Theosophical Society and the Agni Yoga Society. Those four have delivered nearly all of the good people in our group. And we've got hundreds of people now, as you know. But that does not mean to say we've not had challenges. We have. Definitely. Because not everybody will agree all of the time in the way that we go forward. And so some have come, some have gone. There's a large core which have been there. I mean, some have been with me since the 1980s, So we've had this core, but it has been a challenge. Groups are a challenge. There's no doubt about it. And it's challenging for me and challenging for everybody involved. But what we try to do in 12s, and we do fail, Joshua, we do fail, is to set aside. That, to me, solves most group problems. But we don't always succeed, but we try. We always say to everybody, before the meditation, we describe a box and we say, put in that box all those things you don't need. Just for this period of time. And that's what an occultist and white magician is, Joshua. It's somebody who has the ability to set aside and focus on the one thing that needs to be focused on.
Yeah.
Without thinking about, do I like that person next to me? Do I agree with the leader of the group?
Yeah.
Do I think that's the right direction?
You've got to increase the resolution or attention on that second lens of the soul, and maybe decrease the focus or the resolution on the personality or the
exactly. And the more you do that, it will become so small, the first lens, it will disappear one day. Of course, it hasn't disappeared for me, but one day I'm working towards it. Yeah. Disappearing. And so the personality has to be not dominated, I wouldn't say, but it has to be transmuted.
Yeah.
And let go. In fact, when I was younger and much more stupid than I am now, I thought that the personality had to be dominated in my early days in my journey. And I tried to control everything, dominate everything, yeah? Become celibate, do this, do that, do this, do that. Mm. And the point is, though, by doing that, you're not actually dealing with the issues at all. What you're doing is you're trying to control them, and you can't.
Yeah. Well, it's
not yet, anyway.
It's like the personality trying to control the personality. And
you can't control it.
I'm thinking of a specific person I knew who was doing that. And fortunately, he, to some degree, woke up to it. But he thought he could just sort of avoid his personality.
No, you can't.
But that didn't work. And it's like in the labors of Hercules, that one labor where Hercules is going to tame these man-eating mares, and he catches them, and then he gives them to his friend Abderus, who people know as Aeolus from that TV series. And then he has them, and then they trample him and they kill him, because the horses represent the forces of the mind going out of control, and the soul can get those under control, but the personality can't get those under control.
No, the personality is what it says. It's persona. It's the mask of the soul, the personality. That's what the word personality comes from, persona. And that is the mask of the soul. It's not the soul, it's the mask. It's the thing separating the soul from living its full activity levels because of this stupid personalities in the way. And drives me crazy, I must tell you. And I'll be very happy one day to completely destroy it and let it go. But I want to emphasize that some groups have been formed just to do that work, to work on the personality and to do that. My group is not one of them. What we say to people is, whatever your individual evolution, whatever your individual journey, whatever your career, finances, and everything else, put it all aside and come into group formation, visualize the triangles and this 12-pointed star, visualize the Antakarana, visualize the hierarchy, and visualize the distribution through invocations into the world of humankind. So what we say is, whatever your journey, whatever level you're at, set it aside rather than work on it. Other groups, other fantastic groups, Lucis Trust, Moira Federation and others, they're teaching groups. My group is not a teaching group as such. Other groups are teaching groups. They do a fantastic job in bringing people into the Arcane School and the Moira Federation and the School of Esoteric Studies, I should mention, Meditation Mount, all those places. Bring the people in, teach them about occultism, teach them about the soul, teach them about the afterlife and reincarnation and rays. That's not what I'm about, and my group is not about that. We're about saying, you've got all of that stuff. Please stay in Lucis. Please stay in Moira. We have no objection to people doing all of that. But when you come to do the 12s work, the formation work, the white magician work, set it aside. That's what we ask each of our co-workers. Sometimes we succeed, sometimes we don't, but that's what we try to do.
So there's probably a lot of different people working. Some might be from those schools, and I'm sure some of them will be from the 12s group. But what would you say to different people of how they can be of service in this year? You know, what can they do to help move the plan forward or precipitate things? What are some practices or ideas? I mean, some people might not even be affiliated with any spiritual group at all. What would you say to them in addition to?
Well, yeah, I mean, many people are not affiliated to spiritual groups. I mean, the work they can do is within themselves. They can study the books. That's one aspect. Although I'm not a great book studier, they can do that. They can get the foundations. But the most important thing they can do, Joshua, is praxis, that old word praxis. Whatever you learn, however much reading you do of DK, and I've met some people who've read DK books like 10 times. I haven't, I'll tell you straight. But some people have. But they don't put it into practice. You can do all the book learning in the world. You can train to be a doctor for 7 years, but if you don't go and work in a hospital and heal people, it's a complete waste of time, isn't it? So it's all about DK and group work, and the real occultism of the white magician is all about putting it into practice in your daily life, but also seeking groups who you can work with. You might start with the Lucis Trust and Triangles. That's a very good place to start. Yeah, you can join their triangle network. You're actually doing something practical to aid the hierarchy. If most of the people that say in my group, several hundred, they most of them have done the triangle stuff. They still do it, by the way. We don't ask them to give up anything to join 12s. And then we simply extrapolate that work into the work of 12 formations. In the 80s, it was done in 9 formations. I don't know if you're aware of the history.
Yeah, a little bit.
And then, yeah, without going down that rabbit hole, we'd be here for another 2 hours.
To summarize, you know, what you can do if you're on your own is just put things into practice, put the spiritual ideals and values into your daily life. And if you're so inclined to join up with some sort of spiritual group to try to bring down some of these higher energies.
Well, yeah, I would encourage. I would be more forceful in my encouragement of not staying on your own.
Okay.
On your own, because on your own you're going to do very little, and joining a good group, a good, well-founded group, doesn't mean you found nirvana, but it means you found a place to do something. It doesn't mean you'll always be successful, but DK, as I come back to it, the books are all about group work. From the very first book, Occult Meditation. Yeah. By the way, little interesting aside, some people think that Initiation Human Solar is the first book, and it wasn't. But anyway, Letters on Occult Meditation was actually the first book. And from there, he talked about group work all the way through the 18 books. Well, 19 if you include Light on the Soul. All the way through his books, he talked about group, all the time. He never talked about individuals much. Yeah. DK. In fact, he started off discipleship in New Age groups to try to put into practice what he was teaching. And they started off with 50 people and ended up with 16 people. And DK closed it down as a failure. Yeah,
he said it failed in the purpose he was trying to achieve, there were sort of secondary benefits of people learning stuff and developing and all that. But his stated goal it was clearing glamour, right? That was the main goal of the group, if I'm not mistaken.
The thing, the glamour is in all groups.
Yeah,
I can tell you that.
But the purpose that the service that the group was supposed to render was clearing glamour in the wider world, if I'm not mistaken.
Partly that, and partly within her own group, of course.
Yeah. Well, you have to start first.
But that was part of it. But I would claim that it was always destined to develop into groups of 3, 6, 9, and 12. That's what I would say. And in fact, many times in the Blue Books, DK hints at 12s. Talks about 12s a little bit, and certainly Master Moira discussed 12s in Agni Yoga, in the book Agni Yoga. He specifically mentioned group of 12. So it is got a sound esoteric lineage, 12s, and is based on sound occult principles. Based on, yes, you can do things by yourself, but together we're better.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely agree. And there's more power in groups. The only caution I would give to people is some people get caught up in groupthink and aren't really existing in a group. And there's a lot of people, spiritually inclined people, who haven't really developed their personality enough, at least in certain ways. And so people will get into a group and they'll just go along with things. And they'll even wind up, going along with negative things because of, the greater good or the good of the group or something, supposedly. I mean, it's not really in the good of the group, but following the leader and stuff like that. So when you're in a group, you have to be able to stand in your personality and connect to the soul. You can't just sort of turn that stuff off. I mean, you like you were saying, you can put your daily life worries and stuff sort of to the side, but the danger sometimes is that people will just go along with the tide of the group and not be willing to connect to the group soul, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Sort of.
It's a whole big thing. It's a longer conversation, but
I think that setting aside is very important, and what you're saying is you shouldn't be subservient to the group think. I do understand that too.
I've seen that a lot in spiritual groups, is that you'll get people that are looking for guidance and leadership and somebody to teach them and stuff. And maybe that's not all they're looking for, but that's a strong part of it. And like, they'll just sort of turn off their personality or turn off themselves.
Yeah, but
they'll move into a more
but
and they're sort of
But if I meet somebody like that, I wouldn't recommend them to come to my group at all. And in fact, many people have come and gone because they just won't be able to handle two things. They won't be able to handle the teaching side, because we are a deep meditation group, and we have a lot of knowledge in the group and a lot of quite well known co-workers. And the other thing is they certainly won't be able to handle the energy. Impossible. Some people will come into our group. We've had people come into our group and go crazy almost and have to leave. We've had a few people like that. They start coming up with all sorts of nonsense, and we just say to them, I'm sorry, but this is not right for you. Yeah. They'd be much better going to starting off at the level of appropriate, world goodwill and things like that. Those are places to start for them. And also they have to get their knowledge base up to knowledge. I don't think there's very few in my group who have not read the Blue Books and have an understanding of what we're trying to do. Because if you come in and you have no understanding at all, you're going to be completely overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And we've had that. Yeah. Of course we have.
I've met a lot of people in the esoteric thing that really need to work on character issues, and they've sort of decided to sort of overlook that stuff, and now they're on to the 14 rules of group initiation. And so I would just put that out there as, the Tibetan sort of glosses over that, and he's like, I don't refer to character building here. That's something you should have already taken care of.
Yeah, that's right.
People sort of forget that part of it, and they're just like, oh, I'm working on all this other stuff, and they're not really honest, or there's a lot of selfishness and fear and stuff. Anyway, I don't want to get down a whole rabbit hole with that, but just an observation. Is there anything else regarding 2025 that we haven't covered that you'd like to touch on?
Only that it happens every 100 years. People need to wake up to it.
Yeah.
I personally don't want to wait until 21, 25.
Yeah.
to try to do something good with my life. The other thing I would say is, for me personally, my whole life is about this work. I've had a great career. I've got lots of things happening in my life, but actually it's all irrelevant. The only thing that's relevant is my soul work. And in this incarnation, my soul work is to establish 12s, and I think I've just about done that, is to make sure it's fairly widely known within our genre so people can choose to join us or not. And most importantly, is to set up 12s in different countries and to have a connection with our ashram and to do what we can in the best of our ability, to the best of our ability. We're not saying we do it well. We're not saying we're experts. We're saying to the best of our ability to be conscious workers with the forces of light and to help the world teacher return on the world Antakarana. And that's what we're doing. We're working with the Antakarana. We're working in the groups. We're working with the rays. And we're trying to do what we can to assist the hierarchy during this conclave year. This is the important point. And so it all comes to an apex this year. And the decisions will be made, what will happen to humanity in the next 100 years. It will be made this year. And so people often ask me, is this conclave one day? My understanding, it's the whole year. It does peak at Wesak in May, on the 12th of May, but it actually stretches over the whole year. So you've got this build up in energy, then you've got the peak of it at Wesak, and then you've got the distribution of energy for the rest of the year. And we've got,
I didn't think
got
it
40
was a day, but I thought maybe it was like a certain month or a certain period of time during the year when that actual conclave happened. But I don't know for sure.
Well, it's not a conclave like a meeting of people. It's a coming together of energies. I mean, I think it's a year-long process, is what I'm trying to say. I'm not saying it's a year-long meeting because it'd be very boring, wouldn't it, if it's a year-long meeting? But it's because it's a merging of energies, and it takes a year to build up and to then distribute throughout humanity. Now, whether the hierarchy will decide to continue as we are or not, I cannot say.
Yeah.
My personal opinion, if you ask me for my personal opinion, and it's only my own personal view, it's not a group view, is that I believe there'll be an intervention.
That we kind of haven't made it as far as we needed to, but you think...
I think we can't go any further. I don't think humanity's got the ability to do what DK and the hierarchy wanted it to do, and so therefore there's only two choices. Either scrap it and start again, as they did in Atlantis, Lemuria, and done it before, or we have an intervention, as in the case of Jesus, etc., and the being returns, and everybody goes, wow, and the Christ speaks to every heart and every mind and every soul. That's the only way to save humanity, in my opinion.
Do you have any thoughts on the fourth ray? That's another thing the Tibetan says, that the fourth ray is going to come into manifestation starting in 2025.
Yeah, that's a huge event spanning hundreds of years. To be honest, I'm not the best person to answer that question for you.
Okay.
I'm not an expert on the rays.
I'll just add some brief thoughts on it. The fourth ray is the ray of conflict. Harmony through conflict.
Harmony through conflict. Yeah.
And one thing the Tibetan said is that in the past, the conflict part of that ray has been emphasized, but actually this time around or going forward, that the harmony part will be more dominant. So hopefully that's something to look forward to. We'll see what happens. Right?
I think that the more crucial thing from my point of view is the incoming seventh ray. My group is a seventh ray group. That's what we are with a second ray soul. So our working group formation is seventh ray, Joshua. Pure seventh ray work. Ceremonial magic work.
Ceremonial order of magic.
Yeah. And that's the work that can do a lot of good for humanity right now. And the seventh ray is incoming. And we also, at the soul level, we're a second ray group. Yeah.
All right.
But yes.
Yeah.
Go on.
Well, if you had something to say, I was going to move to the final question.
Please do, yeah.
So the final question I ask of all people interested or affiliated with ageless wisdom and esotericism is, what aspect or facet of the plan, as DK defines it, would you like to call more light or attention to?
Cooperation and sharing between people. That, at the basic level, leaving all the text speak of occultism aside, we need to get the wars stopped, get the war in Ukraine stopped. And there's a chance it will stop soon. The Gaza thing must never happen again. We're a long way from finishing that. We've got to be wary of Taiwan and all the other issues. But the thing behind all those personality issues is the soul work of compassion, sharing, and cooperation. I think those are the three words I'd use: cooperation, sharing, and compassion.
Worthy to aspire to and to implement those ideals down here on the physical plane in our relationships. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Steve. I've enjoyed the conversation. It's been fun. Would you like to plug anything?
Well, as you know, I've got this new book out that people might be interested in. Oh, can you see it?
I'll put it up on the screen afterwards. So.
Yeah, there's that one, and then there's, of course, my old classic. I can honestly say they're the only books on 2025 in publication.
All right, and we'll put links in the description to where you can reach out to
kind of you.
Find his books and so forth. So here we go.
All right. Very kind of you.
All right, and if you got this far in the video, please leave a like on it. It really helps out the channel and to get these ideas out there and hopefully reach more people. Consider sharing and subscribing as well. It's always great when that happens, and it means a lot to me. Thank you for coming on, Steve, and hopefully 2025 goes in a good direction for all of us.
We hope so. Peace to all beings. Namaste.
Peace to all.